We are going to talk about group interviews, the dreaded group interview. So the first thing I want to break down for you is, why is this growing in popularity? So group interviews are when you get there and you and a group of other candidates are there at the same time and being interviewed in a group setting. We actually perform this type of interview here at Work It Daily for several reasons, and for the very same reasons that many companies are doing it. First of all, it's a lot more efficient. Old school interview process is, okay, I want to bring in 5 different people. So I've got to set aside 5 different days. I've got to pull together the schedules of multiple people, decision makers, try to coordinate, get everybody there. Then we've got to regroup and compare and contrast and try to remember what, candidate A was like versus candidate C. It's just not a very good, process. And candidly, it's not good for you, because on any given day, things can change. So group interviews are far more efficient. You know that you go in, you see your competition, so to speak, you know the people that you're up against. Everyone interviews on the same day, and usually companies are able to make a decision that day on who's moving forward or who maybe is even getting hired. I know that's how we do it at our company. Or perhaps there's some kind of assignment they want you to do before they make the final pick. Well, after a group interview, it's usually easy to figure out who you want to have do the assignment, that sort of thing. So group interviews, again, are getting more and more common for the efficiency of it and the consistency that it creates. Also, it lets us take a look at what you're like in a group, because some people are very, very good at one-on-one interviewing. And then you get inside a group and you see their whole dynamic change. And so I'll be honest, a lot of times people say, well, don't group interviews really play to the extroverts and the people that are just natural at interviewing? Not in our experience. I actually believe the group interview is better for those introverts, or for those individuals who have true emotional intelligence. They know how to be patient, wait their turn. They're more careful in what they say. They don't cut people off. That's the stuff we're looking for in a group interview. And so today I'm going to walk you through 5 tips actually that will help you stand out. And a lot of it's going to be around that aspect of it, because something that we were taught in HR very early in my career, we were taught that whatever you see in the interview, multiply it by 10, and that's the kind of person they're going to be on the job. So we're looking for those little personality things that are kind of giving us the indicator that when magnified, if they actually got the job, could be hard to mesh with our team. And I know you say, oh, JT, that's not fair. It should be based on the person with the best experience. No, folks, it shouldn't. There's hundreds and millions of dollars of research to show that the best performing teams, the teams that are the most productive, the most successful, it's all about the synergy. It's all about the bonding. It's all about people getting along with one another. That does not change. And so you have to be good at these group interviews and show what kind of team player you'll be, because it can actually give you a chance to get the job, even if you don't have all the experience, even if you aren't the most knowledgeable person in the room. We always tell you here at Work It Daily, they hire you on 3 things: personality, aptitude, meaning you can adapt, and experience. And they hire in that order. And so they're always evaluating you on those 3 main things and trying to find the person that has, the right amount of each. Okay. All right. So let's start to break this down. Before I get started, I just want to give an overarching theme. And I think I've kind of been alluding to it. Always think we, not me. And if you don't know what that means, or if you feel like you need a lesson in it, I'm going to mention a book. It's called Tribal Leadership. It's been around. It's one of my favorite books for business of all times. And it's because they talk about the 5 stages of growth of a company. And a lot of companies today, they kind of cap out at stage 3, which is the I'm the best stage. And that's because they go out and they hire a bunch of individual performers, top performers. So all of us in our career, when we start out, our goal is to get better and better. And we want to be the best because we know the better we get, the more opportunities we'll have, the more income we can make, we can negotiate for higher salaries. So I get that mentality. But at some point in time, you have to flip the switch and start to think about the fact that I want to be on the best team. I want us to say we're the best. And that requires a different mindset and definitely a different way of presenting yourself as a potential candidate. So these days, you should be thinking about that we factor, not that me factor, especially in the group interview. So the first thing that I want to tell you to do is to try not to one-up people. So a very common practice in a group interview would be to go around the room and ask everybody to introduce themselves. At Work It Daily, we often ask you to share something. We'll say like, what's your favorite food, or what's one place that you want to travel to that's on your bucket list, something that everyone in the room can share, including all of the people that are on my staff that are interviewing. We put everyone together. So we really want to build that team moment and get everyone to see our styles as well as an opportunity to share their style. So some of the recent mistakes I've seen people make is that we'll have somebody who's a candidate say something really funny or tell a really interesting story, and then the person after that will feel like they have to one up them. They'll have to say something more interesting or kind of, better than. And it's clear they're trying to do that because they're feeling that competitive spirit. On the flip side, I've also seen people say, well, I can't top that, and not say it in a lighthearted tone, but more of a competitive, snarky tone that sort of plays down or almost makes fun of the person for sharing it. Once again, that's a red flag to me because it shows that you're not good with competition. This person did something great. They shared something great. It was evident. So you don't have to be over the top about it. You also don't have to try to, trash talk them for it. So really think about it. Stay in your lane. Stay true to your personality. Say what you really feel and believe. Use your natural energy, but be very cognizant of the fact that just because you're in the group setting, this is not the time to try to one up somebody there. You're not in that kind of competition. All right. Second tip, making eye contact with everyone. This is a big one for me. So when we go in and we introduce ourselves, obviously there's going to be people of all levels, right? You might have some new people who are more entry level that are there interviewing you. You might have the hiring manager. You might even have the CEO in the room. And so many times I've seen the candidate focus all their attention on the hiring manager or on the most senior executive in the room. Big, big mistake. Anybody from the company that is there interviewing you has a say in whether or not you get hired. And for you to direct all your attention and all of your answers towards the more senior people, it's a real sign of disrespect. So make sure that you practice scanning the room. And that's something that you can do at home. Everyone here should be prepping. If you're not, I'm showing resource page down below. As you know, we reference a lot of resources here. We have a ton of them at Work It Daily, free resources. One of them down below is the most common interview questions. You should download that. You should write out the answers, and you should practice answering and scanning the room when you're answering. Because if you're in a group interview, you have to be able to talk and make eye contact with everyone. Now, little tip, if you're very, very nervous when you interview and this idea of scanning is too distracting, then one thing I can tell you to do is whoever asks the question, you can respond to them. But try not to automatically respond to whoever you think is the most senior person, okay? But ideally, what you want to be able to do is scan the room when you're answering the question. Awesome, okay. So third tip, build on what others say. So this is very different than one-upping. I don't want you to one-up. Building on what others say is you showing that you're listening to everyone around you. This is a big one. So let's say you're in a group interview and one of the candidates there is sharing or answering a question in a particular way, and it really makes sense to you. Something they said really resonates, and in your mind you're going, dang, like that's what I wanted to say. That was the aha moment or the brilliant thing I wanted to share, observation, whatever. You can build on that. You can say, I really liked Larry's answer, especially when he talked about this, because I can relate to that. Something very similar happened to me. And in fact, this is what happened after that. So you have to pay attention to all the other players. And when it makes sense, if they've said something valuable, hat tip them for it. Hat tipping is when you acknowledge and you compliment. That is one of the biggest signs of character to me in a group interview. If somebody at the table is so comfortable with themselves and doesn't feel competitive that they can compliment and, rise up another candidate, bonus points. Because in my company, that's what we're about. We're a team. And everyone here has a specialty and they know their specialty, but they also know that we couldn't do what we do without one another. And so it's very important that we compliment and recognize one another. So that's an opportunity for you to do that in the group interview, and it really scores bonus points. All right, number 4, treat everyone like the CEO. I kind of alluded to this one already, but I need to reinforce it. Again, if you're sitting there directing all your attention and if you're being more animated and energetic with the CEO or the hiring manager and you're sort of ignoring the receptionist or the intern, don't forget, if they're in that interview, they have a say in whether you get hired. In one of my future episodes, I'm going to walk you all through the 4 buyers in the hiring process. I'm going to show you who they are and help you understand that there are a lot of technical buyers in a hiring process. These are people that are there to assess your abilities. And even though they can't get you the job, they can get you disqualified. Also, you want to get to know the users, people that would be like your peers. Again, they don't get the final say in whether you get hired, but they can make your life miserable and sabotage you on the job if you were disrespectful to them. So again, everyone there is equal. They would not be in that room if they weren't. And you need to remember that and really pay, respect to everyone there. And then my 5th tip is to really showcase your intellectual humility. This is such a big one with me these days. I can't stress it enough. And it's interesting. I think a lot of this has to do with the generations and how they're evolving. So no slight to my boomers, my older generation. You were raised in a time where it was very important to be the best. You were raised with that competitive nature in a time in business where, there were hierarchy in performance and competitiveness. And so you've been raised to, talk about yourself and all of your experience and really showcase your knowledge that you're a jack or a Jill of all trades. Problem is that doesn't land very well with the other generations because they weren't raised that way, right? Gen Xers were, the smallest generation. They were raised to be very independent and entrepreneurial and not as competitive as much as it was, hey, we've got to do this. We've got to get this done. And then millennials were raised with everything is team-based. Help teammates, help each other. So you have to really start to follow this new trend because there's such a larger percentage of people in the workforce now who are about this concept of intellectual humility. And what it simply means is that you really are able to play down your own skills and abilities and play up those around people around you, which again, I've alluded to in earlier tips. But in this case, you have to think about that. Complimenting people. When you share stories about your accomplishments, use the term we, not me, right? We did this together. We were able to make this happen. Really share in the success as you're sharing that success, share it with others, so to speak. And understanding how to present yourself in a way that has a lot of intellectual humility is super important these days. You have to be careful that you're not too over the top or, as we say, yelling and selling. And that's just, it's like nails on the chalkboard. It rubs people the wrong way. So be very careful of that in group interviews. Sometimes people will say to me, oh, everybody was super quiet. So, I've got a big personality, JT. I can't help myself. So, I was just the social person in the room. I just kind of took charge and, made everybody laugh and, kept things going. People will leave really proud of that and then shocked when they don't move to the next round. And that's because they didn't have enough emotional intelligence and intellectual humility to pull back and understand it wasn't their job. No one assigned them to own the room. No one assigned them to, want to be the rock star. And again, this is very different than what other generations have experienced. So that's why group interviews are something that's new that you need to practice your answers and your interactions around. All right. I'm going to end with this, and then we're going to go to Q&A. So start getting those questions ready. It's not about being the best. And in fact, if you check out that tribal leadership book that I recommended, it's such a great book, such an important read. They've got it on books on tape on Audible. It's not about being the best. It's about being part of the best. And when you go into a group interview thinking about that and sharing your experience about how you've been part of the best and really how you want to be part of the best, you will do much better, much, much better in that group interview. There's a reason that company is having a group interview. There's a reason we do them at my company, because that's how we operate. We want to be, as tribal leadership points out, at the pinnacle. And to do that, we have to be part of a problem that's bigger than ourselves. We have to put our personal egos aside, and we have to be an amazing team. Group interviews are how you find those right people. So if you want to work for a company like that and they're bringing you in on a group interview, these are the things that you need to do. Okay.